In this time and place, we're not really accustomed to or familiar with kings. Really, for most of us, the only kind of experience or knowledge that we have of kings comes from the Windsor family in Britain. And they're not really royalty in the way that historically royalty has operated. According to the University College of London, they say that their monarchy does not rule. Instead, they are obliged to follow the government's advice. This is not the kind of king the psalmist has in mind in Psalm 93. Instead, he is thinking of figures like David, like Nebuchadnezzar, like Alexander the Great. Hear these descriptions from the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 2, speaking of Nebuchadnezzar. You, O king, the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, and the might, and the glory, and into whose hand he has given, wherever they dwell, the children of men, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, making you rule over them all. Or how about the description of Alexander in Daniel chapter 11? Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion, and do as he wills. This doesn't sound like the kind of kings that we are probably more familiar with in our day and time. But this is the kind of king that the psalmist has in mind when he says, the Lord reigns. And if you only hear and remember one thing that I say today, hear this. The Lord reigns. Yahweh reigns. Present tense. He reigns now and forever. Psalm 93 describes how he reigns, and I'm going to summarize that description in 4 ways. The first is that he reigns in majesty from verse 1. Verse 1, the Lord reigns, he is robed in majesty. The Lord is robed, he has put on strength as his belt. Majesty is sovereign power. It is greatness. It is authority. It is grandeur. It means that the Lord is worthy of reigning. He is a king who conducts himself in a kingly, respectable fashion, and who has the requisite power and authority to be worthy of that reign. He is robed. The kings would wear robes. It would be a symbol of their ruling and reigning. And hear this description of the Lord being robed from Isaiah chapter 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the thresholds shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. This is the king that the psalmist describes for us in Psalm 93. He is robed. He also is belted. So for a king, the symbolism of wearing a belt, right? This is where he would tuck in his robe when he was ready to fight, when he would go out to battle. So this king is not some old codger, helpless, sitting on a throne, hoping that people will listen to him and obey him. This is a mighty king, one who leads in battle. The end of verse 1, he says, the world is established, it shall never be moved. That word established, it means it's firm. It's not going to move. And you might think, well, our world moves. Physically, it moves. Emotionally, In the news, politically, it moves all the time. But think about this. The world is the most sound, firm, established thing that you know. You do not wonder if the world will be here tomorrow. You don't wonder whether the sun is going to rise tomorrow. You don't wonder whether gravity will suddenly cease and you will be flung off into space. Even in the midst of this heat this morning, you don't wonder if it will suddenly spike to a temperature where all life will cease to exist. This world is the most firm, established thing that you know, that you have in your experience. And he made it. He created it. He made it this way. He is the creator. As creator, he is by right and by default its king. Not only that, as the one who established the earth, he has sovereign power over it. It shall not be moved. God is sovereign over all. He reigns in majesty. What does this mean for us? It means that he is in absolute control and he has the right to reign. It means that we are not in control. And when we fight for that control, we wind up frustrated and disillusioned. It means that we are small, we are powerless, and we must submit to the sovereign, majestic one. I could give you all kinds of measurements and facts demonstrating how small we are. But just think about this. The farthest that we can see with the most powerful telescopes that we only know something about because of mathematics, he made that. He put that there. He knows all about it. And he knows the millions of things beyond that because he made them too. This is the only place in the universe that we can survive. He made that. He is sovereign over all. Secondly, from verse 2, he reigns eternally. Your throne is established from of old. You are from everlasting. After stating that the Lord established the world, the psalmist states that his throne is established from of old. Isaiah 66:1 says, "Heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool." Of course, if his footstool is firmly established, his throne is that much more firm. The throne, it's the seat from which he rules, from which he utters decrees. And it says it's of old. Of course it's from of old. He must predate his creation. It says he is from everlasting. This means that he did not have a beginning. He has always been. Remember when I said at the beginning that he reigns is in the present tense. He currently reigns. He has always reigned, this verse tells us, and he always will reign. It might not feel that way to us all the time. We might look around our world and it might feel like God is not reigning to us. But let me encourage you, he is the king. The devil is the prince of the power of the air, but he is not king. He does not rule with absolute power and with absolute authority. He does not do what he wills. Only Yahweh rules that way and permits the activity of the devil to go on for a time. What does that mean for us? It means we can safely trust in our King. His reign is not in jeopardy. He is not in danger of being replaced. His plans, his power, his promises, it cannot be thwarted. Rest in that. Thirdly, from verses 3 and 4, he reigns victoriously. How many of you have ever been to the ocean or a really big lake like Lake Superior? Have you stood on the beach or in the water as the waves come in and come crashing on the shore? They roll in, they billow in. The poetry here in this psalm, it resembles those waves. It builds on itself. And the psalmist says it 3 times to emphasize the waves are coming, the floods are rising up. So I want to try something this morning. Kids, I need you. You guys all have a program, or do you have a good memory? Because I need you to say all of verse 3, okay? The first line you're going to say by yourself. The floods have lifted up, O Lord. Can you guys do that?
The floods have lifted up, O Lord.
Louder. Do it again.
The floods have lifted up, O Lord.
Excellent. Then you are going to be joined by all the ladies here. And I want you guys to say, the floods have lifted up their voice. Can we hear that?
The floods have lifted up their voice.
All right. And then all together, everyone at the same time, I want to say loudly, the floods lift up their roaring.
The floods lift up their roaring.
All right, let's try it now. Kids, you're first. The floods have lifted up, O Lord.
The floods have lifted up, O Lord. The floods have lifted up their voice.
The floods have put up their roaring. You feel that? You feel the waves coming in and crashing over you? Now, the water metaphor in the Bible, it's used in several different ways. But here, the water is the enemy. The water is the dangers. It's the problems in your life. He calls it floods. It's overwhelming. Last week, there was a sudden storm on a lake called Lake Geneva in Wisconsin. Not forecasted. Suddenly winds of 90 to 100 miles an hour. And there were people caught out on that lake. And there was one family in particular, extended family, on a 25-foot wake boat. 10 of them stuck in this storm. And the pilot of the boat, he was experienced, and he couldn't make it to safety. So he turned the boat into the wind, which was their best chance at riding it out. But 2 huge waves crashed over the boat and filled it with water, and the boat started to lean. And then a 3rd wave came in and knocked the boat over, and it rapidly sank to the bottom. 3 people died, even though they were wearing life jackets. Why do I tell you this story? The waves can be dangerous. They can be overwhelming. Right? We are not in any way trying to belittle the suffering and the struggle that you might have. But the psalmist isn't talking about literal waves. He's talking about what you are going through. He's talking about the enemies, physical suffering, psychological and emotional suffering. He's talking about spiritual failure and struggle, difficult relationships, the bad news that you got this week, the financial struggles that you are having, anything that threatens to shipwreck you. That's what the psalmist has in mind. And he pictures it as waves, as this rising flood. You're supposed to, at this point in the psalm, feel helpless, overwhelmed. Now for the good news. Just as the 3-fold repetition symbolized the increasing and grave opposition from the floods, he gives a 3-fold repetition of God's might and greatness, which represents how mighty God is in the face of things that we deal with. The word mighty here, it's probably better rendered as greater or higher. The idea is the floods are lifting up. They are rising. But God is higher. God is greater. What does this mean for us? It means God is victorious. He's not going to lose. It doesn't matter how big the storm is, how high the waves are, Yahweh is victorious. And victory is available to you in the Lord if you look to Him in every situation. Now I have to say, to be fair, victory in the Lord, it may not look how you want it to or how you expect it to. But remember, He is the one who is the sovereign authority. You are not. And so when He tells you this is victory, and when He brings it your way, as his subject, bow to that, submit to that, accept the victory that he gives. He is the one who determines what victory looks like. Fourthly, from verse 5, he reigns in holiness. Holiness is one of God's key attributes. Remember in Isaiah 6, the seraphim were calling out, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord." But holiness can be a little hard to define, especially when it comes to God. In its most basic sense, it means set apart. And it is what sets God apart from other gods and other kings. He is unique. We might, in this case, call it perfection. Holiness means that he perfectly acts within his character. He is perfectly righteous, perfectly just. As this verse says, he is perfectly trustworthy. His decrees, those are his words, his promises, they can be trusted. He always does what he says. Nobody can stop him or prevent him from doing so. So if he makes you a promise, and he's made many of them in his word, nothing can stop him from carrying out those promises. Not the thing that is very big to you right now. Not a culture that has rejected him. Not a world that thinks every God is the same. No one can stop him. And it says that holiness befits his house. It is fitting for his dwelling, or it adorns or decorates it. Well, where does the Lord dwell? Well, he must dwell at his throne in heaven, right? But John 1:14 says the Word became flesh and he dwelt among us. The Bible says the Spirit dwells within us, and that we as a church are being built up as a holy temple, and that where 2 or 3 of us are gathered, he is there in our midst. So this holiness, it needs to be true of us if we are going to adorn his house, if he is going to dwell with us as our God forevermore, as Revelation chapter 21 says he will. Back to Isaiah chapter 6. It's a familiar passage. When Isaiah is confronted by the Lord, high and lifted up, seated on his throne, and these seraphim, these angels flying about, proclaiming his holiness, what is Isaiah's response? He says, "Woe is me. Woe is me." And that is the right and fitting response for any one of us when we come into the presence of our reigning King. Woe is me. Isaiah recognized that he is a fallen man. He says, "I am a man of unclean lips." He knew he was not holy, and he knew he was in trouble. But what happens next? One of the seraphim grabs a coal from the altar and flies to him, and he says to him, "Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for." We are in the same position as Isaiah. We need someone else to atone for our sin. We cannot do it ourselves. We need someone else to make us holy. This is where the great exchange comes in from 2 Corinthians 5:21. For our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Jesus Christ atoned for our sin so that we could be holy and dwell with our King who reigns, as the chapter ends, forevermore. Not until the end of this world, not until the end of our lives, not for 1,000 years, forever. And we are invited to come and dwell with this King in his holiness, if we have submitted ourselves to him, if we have been atoned for by Jesus Christ.